the homecoming for these 3 crew members who spent 220 days on the station, ending a mission of 3,520 orbits of the Earth that has spanned 93.3 million statute miles. Landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan for Pettit, Ovchinin, and Vagner is scheduled at 8:20 and 44 seconds p.m. Central Time, which is 6:20 and 44 seconds a.m. Kazakhstan time on Sunday morning, April 20th, Easter Sunday, Don Pettit's 70th birthday. Everything has gone extremely well as we have proceeded down the deorbit checklists and all of the timelines that has set up the Soyuz MS-26 for the engine firing that is coming up now 25 and a half minutes from now. That will be a 4-minute, 41-second braking maneuver to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its 54-minute ride back to the steppe of Kazakhstan, where the trio on board the Soyuz descent module will be greeted by the Rosaviatsa search and recovery forces, including the NASA embedded team that is going to be en route to the landing site a short time from now in a variety of Russian Mi-8 helicopters. Here in Mission Control, Flight Director Garrett Hahn is on orbit at this hour. He's joined on console by spacecraft communicator Luca Parmitano, a veteran of Soyuz missions to the International Space Station. They are working in concert with the flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov on the outskirts of Moscow. You see a view from a balcony camera overlooking the large flight control room as they are in communications with the Soyuz crew, as they will be during the bulk of the descent back to the landing site. Communications will be handed off at some point to a fixed-wing Antonov 26 aircraft that will be flying around the perimeter of the landing site, relaying both voice communications and data back to the control center there in Korolyov for the Russian flight controllers to assess. We'll be going through all of the timeline activities here in a moment. First, a quick look at the departing crew that is just a little bit away from its deorbit burn and entry back into the Earth's atmosphere. Aleksey Ovchinin, the veteran Soyuz commander, in the center seat of the descent module, flanked to his left by Ivan Vagner and to his right by NASA flight engineer Don Pettit. Pettit will have logged 220 days in space at the time of his landing, a total of 590 days in space on his 4 space flights. Aleksey Ovchinin, with 220 days in space on this mission, will have totaled 595 days in space on his 4 flights, and Ivan Vagner, completing his 2nd space flight to the International Space Station, will have totaled 416 days in space on his pair of excursions to the International Outpost. Several hours ago, just before 2 p.m. Central Time, the 3 departing crew members, Ovchinin, Pettit, and Vagner, clad in their blue undergarments, said farewell to the counterparts who are remaining aboard the International Space Station before they closed the hatch, first on the Rosviet module side of the docking interface, and then the Soyuz hatch on the other side of the docking interface to begin a series of leak checks and systems checks that was the precursor to the donning of their Sokol launch and entry suits that they're clad in the descent module of the Soyuz. You see on the right side of your screen Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi, who took over command of the International Space Station on Friday from Aleksey Ovchinin. Onishi will remain commander of the station until his return to Earth with the Crew 10 crew later this year. With all of those systems checks having been completed, the hooks to the Soyuz that held it in place to the Rosviet module opened, and at 4:57 and 37 seconds p.m. Central Time, 5:57 and 37 seconds p.m. Eastern Time, the Soyuz pushed away from the Rosviet module, with physical separation occurring as the station and Soyuz flew 260 miles over southern Mongolia. There were a couple of separation burns that increased the velocity for the Soyuz's departure from the vicinity of the International Space Station, putting it now some 41 kilometers away from the station for the deorbit burn that is scheduled to occur just over 20 minutes from now. Again, looking at a replay of the departure of the Soyuz vehicle from the International Space Station, you see in the field of view the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft that arrived on April 8th with NASA astronaut Johnny Kim and Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhikov and Aleksey Zubritsky parking in the parking place right next door to the Soyuz that has just departed, the MS-26. Upcoming in about 18 and a half minutes, the deorbit burn, again a 4-minute, 41-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz engine to allow it to drop out of orbit for its descent back into the atmosphere. 23 minutes after the deorbit burn, there will be the pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz vehicle, the crew remaining, of course, in the center section, the descent module, with its heat shield repelling the heat that will build up to some 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit around the spacecraft. Once the vehicle has entered through the atmosphere, a drogue chute will be deployed and in turn will pull out the main parachute, that large orange and white parachute. That drag chute will slow the descent rate of the Soyuz down considerably, and then just a moment before touchdown, soft landing engines will fire to soften the impact on the ground, and the Soyuz crew will be home. There are a number of Russian Mi-8 helicopters in play as part of the search and recovery forces, 8 helicopters in all, 2 of which are stationed at the ballistic staging site well to the southwest of the primary landing site. Those 2 Russian Mi-8 helicopters are at the Kryani airport near the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the launch site for Soyuz vehicles. They would come into play in the unlikely event that the Soyuz moved into a ballistic entry that would create a shortfall in their intended landing target, which is to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. There will be a half a dozen Russian Mi-8 helicopters in play for the prime landing site, including NASA personnel. Those personnel took off from Karaganda earlier tonight. They are either en route to the landing site or have landed at the interim staging city of Zhezkazgan. Coming up on 2 minutes until module separation, the updated landing coordinates predicted by the ballistics folks at the Russian Mission Control Center for the Soyuz MS-26 calls for landing to occur at a latitude of 47 degrees 19 minutes north, 69 degrees 33 minutes east longitude.
Visually monitor separation.
The Russian Mi-8 helicopters and the Antonov fixed-wing aircraft are just about in position in a racetrack pattern around the landing site as they await the sight of the Soyuz MS-26 under its chutes Module separation now a minute and a half away.
Everything is fine on board, and the crew is feeling good.
Right on the money. Aleksey Ovchinin reporting that they have emerged from the peak heating period. We are standing by for the deployment of parachutes about a minute and a half from now. And as I just mentioned, you're hearing that radio beacon that is sending out location data to the Antonov fixed-wing aircraft that is flying around the vicinity of the landing site southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan.
All right, the index at the lower bottom integer is plus 16, discrete number minus 0102. Copy.
This is Mission Control Houston. The reports from the search and recovery forces in the Mi-8 helicopters circling the landing site say that they have a visual of the Soyuz under its chutes. This shot of Russian Mi-8 helicopters circling the landing site as we await the descent and a view of the Soyuz under those chutes, but we do have confirmation that the Soyuz main chute has been deployed, so everything continues to proceed in a nominal fashion as we are about 10 minutes and 50 seconds away from touchdown. About a minute and a half until touchdown, the Soyuz descending through 900 meters.
600. Copy.
And there's our first view of the Soyuz. Just about a minute until touchdown, everything looking good.
300 meters right now.
300 meters. There's a Russian Mi-8 helicopter. That will be one of the first helos to land after the Soyuz touches down. Just a moment or two before touchdown, the soft landing thrusters will fire to further reduce the impact. Standing by for touchdown. And touchdown.
It's
Soyuz MS-26 is home at 8:20 p.m. Central Time, 6:20 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Sunday morning. Don Pettit ends his 7-month mission on his 70th birthday. You can see on the right side of your screen amidst the Russian Mi-8 helicopters that have all landed now in the vicinity of the Soyuz MS-26 spacecraft. You see that orange structure there. That's the inflatable medical tent that the crew will be brought into. And now we're getting video of the landing site. There's Aleksey Ovchinin, the Soyuz commander, who has been brought out of the vehicle, first out. 595 days in space on his 4 missions. Once again, a look at Aleksey Ovchinin, the veteran cosmonaut, Soyuz commander. He was the station commander up until Friday for Expedition 72 before handing over that task to Takuya Onishi, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut. There's a view of Bill Ingalls, the NASA chief photographer, who's right at the hatchway of the Soyuz vehicle. And Don Pettit now being extracted.
Fine.
Снимайте его. Не снимай.
This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, Ovchinin and Don Pettit of NASA are out of the Soyuz vehicle. Ivan Vagner is the last that is in the process of being extracted.
Лёш.
Thank you so very much.
The crew displaying nesting or matryoshka dolls. This is typical of all Soyuz landings, gifts to the crew members from the search and recovery teams. And first to be carried toward the medical tent is the Soyuz commander, Aleksey Ovchinin. Once inside the medical tent, the three crew members will be helped out of their Sokol launch and entry suits. They'll move into more comfortable flight clothing and will subsequently board helicopters to be flown back to the staging city of Karaganda, Kazakhstan. Once in Karaganda, Pettit will board a NASA plane to be flown back to Houston, while Ovchinin and Vagner are flown on a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft to Star City, Russia, their training base and home outside of Moscow.